Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Fatherless Sons. I am your host, Wiley, and this is episode 111. On today's episode, under Building Your Empire, we will cover the three key ingredients that you'll need in order to be successful using the information that you learn on this channel. Okay. And it'll be great to go over these because if you're lacking one of the three, you can always build in those areas. Under Couch Time, we'll talk about inflation and changing times. And stick around towards the end so that I can unveil today's episode of Fatherless and Famous. Episode 111's Fatherless and Famous will be revealed towards the end. So stick around for that. Before I get started, I want to remind everyone to go ahead and pick up your copy of Echoes of a Fatherless Son. This is a book that I authored early last year, 2025. So if you haven't had a chance to pick it up, go ahead and do so. There's a link in the description on how you can find it on Amazon. And it does come in 4 different formats. For those who like to listen, it does come in audiobook format. So go ahead and be sure to pick it up as soon as you can. All right, so let's jump right into building your empire. And today's episode, like I said, I want to cover the 3 key ingredients that you'll need in order to be successful using all of the information that you learn on this channel, especially under the Building Your Empire segment. Because that beginning segment, I try to drop a lot of knowledge and things that are not common knowledge to people who are really trying to find financial freedom. So under Building Your Empire, I kind of spill all the beans. I give you all the insider tricks and all the secrets. But those tricks and secrets will do no good if you do not have these 3 key ingredients. And I like to abbreviate the 3 ingredients as KFC. And no, it does not stand for Kentucky Fried Chicken. It stands for knowledge, funding, and courage. Those are the 3 ingredients that you need in order to find success using this information. So let's talk about the first one, knowledge, which is what hopefully you're gaining from watching these episodes. Like I said, I give you all the insider information on how to build wealth, maintain wealth, and protect wealth. Now, a lot of times you'll see people inside of a family, they pass that down generationally. Now, it's not just the money that they're passing down to their kids, but it's also the knowledge. And like I said, this knowledge is not something you're going to find in college. It's not something you're going to find in high school. You know, it's just not easily accessible, and it's not just laying around. The people who know this knowledge of how to build wealth, maintain wealth, and protect wealth are wealthy people. And these same wealthy people pass this knowledge down to their kids. I pass it down to my kids, and this is why my kids know more about building wealth and protecting wealth than the average 25-year-old, because my kids are in their mid to late 20s. You need to know which moves to make. That's where the knowledge comes in. You need to know which pitfalls to avoid. You need to know which internet sensations or the latest and greatest information that's out there. You need to know which information to pay attention to, which information to ignore. Because a lot of times I'll hear things on the internet where they're saying all of this stuff about, oh, you need to incorporate, or you need to have a trust, or the best thing that you should have is an irrevocable trust. And they'll say all these different things, and I'm not discrediting what they're saying, because sometimes the information, or the topic rather, is important or is true. Like what they're saying is true. However, it may not be relevant to your situation right now. Okay. So if it's not important to you right now, you shouldn't be chasing it down and trying to implement information and tactics that has nothing to do with you. I'll give you a real quick example. There's a such thing as called a trust that is revocable and a trust that is irrevocable. Now, one will make more sense for a person just starting off on their journey, while the other would make more sense for a person who's at the end of their journey, which to use and in which case we'll cover in a later episode. But this, my point is, on the internet, the internet sensations and the talking heads will say, use this trust, and it's totally inappropriate for where you are on your journey. So this is what I mean by having the right knowledge and knowing which tools to use at any given time. which moves you should be making right now, where your attention should be focused right now. Because if you don't have that guidance, and this is where a mentor would actually come, you know, would be very handy, is to have a mentor who can, guide you and tell you which moves to make. And I'm your virtual mentor. Looking at all of these episodes will kind of guide you and tell you which moves you should be making and what you should be paying close attention to. I'll give you all the knowledge on the channel. This is something that is passed over time, and your instincts will even fight some of the information that I'll give you. But if you really want to make some progress in the area of building wealth, this channel is the place to do it. Let's jump to the next one, which is funding. Now, funding could be your 9 to 5. Funding could be money that you've saved up. Funding could be in the form of a loan. It could be a combination of all of those things. It could be funding could come from items that you own right now that you decide to sell in order to raise capital. But funding is the money that you'll need to really begin your venture, it's like your seed money. And if you do not have any funding, if you're broke, dead broke, and you have no way to gain and raise any kind of capital, then it doesn't matter if you have the knowledge. You won't be able to act on that knowledge because you'll be stuck without money. So a lot of times people will say, well, LaShawn, I don't have the money. I don't have funding. I don't have anything. And that's totally untrue. I do not accept that. That is something I reject. I reject that premise that you have nothing, because we all have something in the United States, especially if you're employed. If you're not employed, then you should have the means to go get employed. And if there's something stopping you from being employed, gainfully employed by someone else, then there's still a solution. You invent your own product. You create your own business. You go into business for yourself. That's the greatness of the U.S. There's always a door that you can walk through if a window is closed. So funding, coming up with the funds. And throughout this series of building your empire, we'll eventually talk about credit, because credit is a great way to access funds. Saving, if you're saving for a project, we kind of talked on this and touched on this in a previous episode when I talk about money press and saving your money to buy your money press. Well, this is where funding comes in, because you need money to buy that money press. Okay. The next one is courage. Now, LaShawn, what does courage have to do with any of this? It has a whole lot to do with it, because you have to have the guts to pull the trigger on your ideal, to pull the trigger on your purchase. And it's going to be the scariest thing that you can do when you first start out. I can remember my very first investment on myself, where I put a lot of money on the table. And I can remember the money, the amount of the money. And this was years ago. This was over a decade ago, where I was investing in my own business, my first business venture that I just really put some real money behind. And it was $14,000. I remember exactly how much it was. And at the time, $14,000 was like everything to me. Like, it was a lot of money, and if I made a mistake, if this was the wrong call, I would be out of $14K. So it was scary putting that money on the table, making those purchases, buying the equipment that I needed to start my own business. $14,000, the fear starts to jump out, asking you questions like, well, LaShawn, what if this doesn't work? What if you're making a mistake? What if you're wasting your money? What if no one comes? What if no one buys your product? What if no one uses your service? Fear is going to ask all of those questions, and you'll need the courage to block that fear out and tell that fear, nope, I did my homework. Nope, I believe in what I'm doing. Nope, I've done my research, and this is the right way to go. And I believe in myself. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to pull the trigger on this. You have to be courageous, and you have to go through with it after you have completed your homework and done your research. You have to push yourself through it. So KFC, those are the 3 things that you must have in order to find success: knowledge, funding, and courage. And what I've observed is most of the people that I run into, they're missing 1, possibly even 2. It is really hard to find someone with all 3. And normally, if you find someone with the knowledge, funding, and the courage, they have either already found financial success or they're well on their way to finding financial success. But you need all three. If you're lacking one of these, if you're lacking the knowledge, stay tuned on this channel so that you can acquire the knowledge needed. If you're lacking the funding, then use the episode that I went over possessions. I believe that was episode 109. Use that episode to understand ways to turn your current possessions into assets that you can use for funding. Okay. And courage, this one is something I can't really teach. The only thing I can say with in regards to courage is do your homework. Research whatever it is you're trying to do thoroughly. The more research you do, the more comfortable and courageous you'll be about pulling the trigger. Whether it's making a purchase of a piece of real estate that you're about to buy and invest in, do your research. Make sure that you get some experts that you know, maybe some mentors to look at that real estate and make sure that you're making the right move here without wasting too much time, because time is always of the essence when you're dealing with the real estate, deals. So just do your homework, use your resources, use your mentors to make sure that you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted so that you'll have the courage needed to pull the trigger. Because the first time you do it, it's going to be scary as I don't know what. But after that, it becomes a whole lot easier because now you have the confidence. Okay, so let's jump right into our next segment, which is couch time. In couch time, I like to share some of the coaching sessions that I had when I was a life coach. And I'll do that today, where I'm going to share some conversation. It's like a combined conversations that I had with multiple people regarding the same topic. A lot of young people that I used to coach, they used to tell me, LaShawn, times are different. You're older and times are different. Times are harder because of inflation and because of just things costing so much more than it did when you were growing up. And I would have to still coach these young individuals to overcome what they saw as an obstacle of inflation and the rising cost of everything. For example, you can't turn the TV on news without hearing how the pricing of housing has gone up so much that young people can no longer afford a home. Now, I'm not going to say that that's totally false. I'm not going to say that. But I will say that if you make sacrifices, you will still be able to purchase that home. If you join or combine incomes with a spouse, a family member, a loved one, a sibling, whomever, but if you combine household incomes with two people, it makes things a whole lot more achievable. So it's all about how bad you want whatever it is you're trying to achieve and purchase. So let's use the example of a home. Let's say it's a home that you're looking to buy, but you can't afford it because the cost of homes has gone up. Interest rates have gone up. They're no longer zero or close to zero. I know people that have sub 3% mortgages for 30 years, and those days are over. So, people come to me and they say, LaShawn, those days are over now. To get a mortgage, you're looking at 7.7, 6.75, maybe 7% if your credit's not so good. So the cost of purchasing a home is too much, and it kind of priced us all out. So what can we do? Well, first thing is, like I just said, combine incomes. The next thing is organize your cash flow in your house. So if you do a budget, like I went over budgeting already, but if you write down all of your expenses, what you're spending your money on, you're going to see where you're wasting money as well. Okay. And if you eliminate where you're wasting money, then that's almost like increasing your cash flow and your salary. So now you have more cash, more money to make the purchases that you're saying you cannot afford. Here's the real truth of it all. And I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Young people are accustomed to the time of COVID. The time of COVID in 2019, 2020, a lot of money was given out for free by the government in order to keep the economy stimulated. And people got used to getting the PPP money. They got used to getting these long extensions for not being able to pay their rent from the state. They got used to these stimulus checks. They got used to extended unemployment benefits. They got used to basically money being given to them for free and being able to buy whatever it is you wanted. You had all kind of money. I remember when the first stimulus checks went out and I walked into a Walmart, The shelves for TVs and electronics were bare because everyone took that stimulus money and they bought all of that stuff. And all of the things that they wanted, they were able to buy. And it wasn't like that before. Before, if you wanted to make it in life, you had to actually, not spend money on the things you want, but instead spend money on the things you need. I remember when I was 19 years old, my first apartment, I would get paid every 2 weeks, and I could not use one of my checks to pay my rent, my rent for every month. I had to use in one entire check and then a couple of $100s from my second check in order to have enough money to pay my rent. And that did not include my light bill and things like that and my car note. So all of my money was gone on my car, my insurance, my cell phone bill, and my rent. All of my money was gone. And in today's age, that is blasphemy. A person will not tolerate not having any money because all their money is spent on those things. And also, when I got older and I had my kids, we would have to pay for childcare. So you have to make sacrifices, is my point. You're not going to be able to get everything at the same time. Sometimes you have to go without and then wait until you're in a position where you can actually go with, where you can start buying the things that you're missing out on. And that's just how life is. So that's the ugly truth of it. You have to go without if you really want the things that you're saying that you cannot afford. You really can afford them if you decide to go without. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Okay. All right. So let's jump to our final segment, which is Fatherless and Famous. All right. So Fatherless and Famous is where we get to celebrate a known or unknown person, but normally they're famous, who have found success even though they grew up in a fatherless home. This could be a male or female. So one of the most important criteria for me to select someone on this is that they were actually fatherless. They don't have to be famous. They could be famous in your eyes. So leave a comment if you know someone that overcame adversity and found success even though they grew up in a fatherless home. So today's episode, Fatherless and Famous, is Simone Biles. And I didn't know that she didn't have a father figure in the home. This was news to me. Now, she's a famous Olympian gymnast, and she's a 4-time gold medal winner. And she has a total of 8 medals, 2 bronze, 2 silvers, 4 gold. She is the most decorated gymnast in history. So let's talk a little bit more about how she grew up without a father figure in the home. At around the age of 6, Simone's parents were unable to continue to care for her. The father just checked out and wasn't trying to be part of the life of raising a kid, whereas her mother had a strong drug addiction that prevented her from being able to care for Simone. So Simone spent a short stint in foster care, and then her grandparents stepped in and adopted Simone. So they took her in at around the age of 6 or so. So Simone, growing up without her dad in her life, she said it taught her that no one will save you but you. So you can't wait for someone else to save you. You have to save yourself. And she said that was the lesson, that was the biggest lesson that she learned from being fatherless. So in around 2024, when Simone was around 27 years old, her dad tried to make indirect contact with her to try to reestablish a role or a space in her life. So he went to Simone's mom, Shannon, and said, hey, the next time you speak with Simone, go ahead and let her know that I want to, speak with her and connect with her. But Simone wasn't trying to hear it. She was not willing to engage with her dad and her mom. She never forgave her mom for becoming addicted to drugs and not being able to raise her and putting her in a foster home. So it was her grandparents that she actually called mom and dad. And those grandparents' name was Ron and Nellie. But you still had that scar of not having your biological dad in the home. And this is why I chose to focus on Simone Biles as our Fatherless and Famous, because her biological father was not around. Now, what we like to also do is talk about a person's net worth. And Simone Biles' net worth is $25 million. Okay. And around 5 million of that each year comes from endorsements. And that's pretty much where she really was able to build her net worth, was from endorsements. So $25 million is probably one of the smallest numbers that I featured on this show, but don't lose perspective. $25 million is still $25 million. It's still a lot of money. I wouldn't be upset if I was stuck at $25 million. I would be totally cool with that. So good job, Simone. Continue being a great Olympian. You still have a lot of time, I believe, to break some records. Simone is only 28 years old. She does not have any children of her own, but she has mentioned that she would love to be a parent. So I'm sure because of how she grew up, she'll be a great parent, because normally that's what we do. When we go through hard times ourselves, we learn from those mistakes and we do better when we're in a position to do so. All right, so that will do it for our episode today. Thank you all for joining. If you have not liked or subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so, and leave a comment if you want to share your story. I would love to hear those stories. And if you have a comment on my videos, go ahead and leave a comment there as well. Questions that you may have, please leave them. I'll do my best to answer them all. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you all next time.